Hello, my name is Mohammed Kimji. In book number 8, we see the fortunes of battle turn dramatically. And book number 8 opens with the rising of the sun. This is a beginning of a new day. And it's a day in which we will see Zeus's promise to Thetis that he will give honor to Achilles by making the Trojans so strong that they will pin the Achaians against the Achaean ships. We see that promise beginning to come to fulfillment finally. The next time that the sun will rise will be book number 11, where the opening line indicates once again the rising of the sun. Book number 8 begins with a council meeting among the immortals. This is the second of 3 important council meetings in the Iliad. We know the first council meeting in book number 2 was a council meeting in which the principal speakers were Zeus and Hera. And Zeus told Hera that her anger against Troy or towards Troy would not be I don't know, would not be her revenge would not be exacted until she ate all of the Trojans raw. She's described in the imagery that you and I might use to describe a lion or another beast of nature, which is, again, not uncommon in the Iliad because the gods are frequently represented in terms of similes of nature, particularly analogies of nature that have to do with predatory animals or the power of nature in terms of destructive forces like lightning and hurricanes and things like that. Well, at that particular time, Zeus told Hera in book number 2 that your hunger and thirst for revenge against Paris, not only Paris, but against Troy, all of Troy, would not be glutted until you had eaten the Trojans raw. But he doesn't want the quarrel between himself and Hera to be a matter of disturbance between the two of them. And while Troy, he says, is his most sacred city, the city that he cherishes, that he loves best, the city whose people had never failed to offer proper sacrifices to him, nevertheless, he tells Hera, do as you please, knowing that she wants Troy and its people utterly exterminated. So the terms that are used, which seem to be very exalted terms that if you and I were to use them to describe a relationship that we have or a person that is important to us, if I say to somebody that I cherish you, or there's never been, a city like this, or I love this, there's never been a person like this, or I love this person, and this person has never done anything wrong to me, the reader would think that that would translate into me wanting to do everything that I can to help that person or to protect that person. But that's not where book number 2 goes, as we have seen. The logic of the text goes in a totally opposite direction, which indicates that the logic of the text is completely different from the logic that I, the reader, bring to the text. And Hera says to Zeus in book number 2 that she wants, Troy to pay. Zeus says, do as you please, on the condition that I can do as I please to your 3 favorite cities. That will be my compensation. And Hera says, well, there are 3 cities that I love best, Argos, Sparta, and Mycenae. Whenever they become hateful to your heart, you can sack them utterly. So it's a stunning moment. It's stunning in book number 8 because there's a council meeting among the gods, and this time Zeus gives the opposite instruction. Zeus tells all of the gods not to interfere, either on the side of the Achaians or to favor the Trojans. And to make sure that his order is followed, is obeyed, he threatens the gods. He tells them that anyone who violates the order will be thrown down into Hades. Hades is very far. It's very far from the earth. It's as far from the earth. The underworld is as far from the earth as the sky is above the earth. And he says that he's going to throw any god who doesn't obey him into Tartarus, and Tartarus is the lowest region of the underworld. And to make sure that they follow his order, he reminds them that he is far, far stronger than all of the gods combined. And you have this image about a cord being dropped from the sky, and all of the gods pulling at this cord, with Zeus alone at the top, pulling in the other direction. And all of the gods together are not able in this, you can say, tug of war to bring Zeus down, but Zeus can very easily lift them all up. And not only the gods, but he can lift the earth up, and he can lift the sea up, and presumably all of the people and all of the things inside also. So you just get the sense that this is a moment where the power of Zeus is described as just being so much greater than the power of all the gods combined. It's interesting that in the Iliad, we find that Zeus himself can be duped. Zeus himself can be overpowered. Zeus himself in book number 1 is described as having once been shackled by the immortals. And it was Thetis who saved him by calling up the giant Briareos. So at some times it seems like Zeus, in fact, can be overpowered, and he's really not stronger than all of the gods. And sometimes he is overpowered even by one god, like Aphrodite, who can make him completely possessed by love, such that he himself cannot do anything about it. And at other times, like the opening of book number 8, Zeus is represented differently. So the hierarchy among the gods is not fixed. It's not stable. It's not presented as fixed or stable all the time. Sometimes the hierarchy is constantly described as toppling in different ways, or the ground of the ground that distinguishes in the order of rank one god from another is just, it's eroding, and the struggle for power and honor among the gods is highly fluid and unstable. So after Zeus makes his threat, we will see that the gods will not actually interfere in any significant way in book number 8. In the meantime, Zeus goes to the highest point of Mount Ida, Gargaron, and we are told that he rejoices in the pride of his strength. This is at line number 51. You get a sense that Zeus once again is described as a predatory animal, a lion, one of the strongest animals, land animals. And he's looking out over the city of Troy and over the Achaians, and he's going to watch men killing and men being killed. Around midday, there's another representation of Zeus, and this time he's holding his golden scales. And it's an important simile because we see that the Achaians' death day falls. It is heavier than the Trojans. And this implies that it is fated that the Achaians will lose men on this day, and it is fated that the Trojans' fortunes will be good, better than the Achaians. And it's just an interesting simile because we get a representation of the cause of what is happening on the battlefield as ultimately beyond what human beings can control. The cause is fate. And fate is represented in terms of what you and I might call a necessity of nature or a law of nature. It's represented as inescapable, as is the heavier side of a scale dropping and the lighter side of a scale, therefore rising of a balanced scale. And it's one of those moments where you see that the poet is describing human life as, or human beings not as ultimately in control or in charge of what happens to them. And indeed, the Trojans will have a very, very, very strong day on the battlefield. Zeus sends a lightning strike from Mount Ida that terrifies the Achaians. In book number 8, we also see Paris, Alexandros, score his first hit that is described in the Iliad. He takes down Nestor's horse. He shoots an arrow that connects with the head and actually is driven all the way into the brain. And Nestor cuts away the trace harness, which is the harness that is connected to a trace horse, and a trace horse is a corollary horse or a horse that is riding with the main horses, running with the main horses, but is not a main horse. And Nestor cuts the cord and the horse drops away. And Diomedes sees that Nestor is in very grave danger. And he goes to Nestor and he tells Nestor to climb into his, Diomedes' chariot. At line number 105, he says, "Climb into my chariot so that you may see what the Trojan horses are like, how they understand their slain, and how to traverse it in rapid pursuit and withdrawal. Horses I took away from Aeneas." When did Diomedes take horses away from Aeneas? Well, that happens during his great time in battle in book number 5. It actually happens at line numbers 319 to 324 of book number 5. And so he is in possession at this point of Aeneas's horses. He had at that time smashed a stone against Aeneas's hip socket. We looked at that. And it was Aphrodite who carried him out of the fighting. And then Diomedes wounded her, and she dropped Aeneas, and then it was Apollo who saved Aeneas. So it was in that context that he had taken these horses. It's interesting. Diomedes continues having success in battle, at least in the opening part of book number 8. He kills Hector's charioteer at line number 118. The son of Tydeus threw at him and missed his man, Hector, but struck the charioteer, his henchman. And Hector will leave his charioteer on the ground. At line number 124, 125, bitter sorrow closed over Hector's heart for his driver, yet grieving as he did for his friend, he left him to lie there. This is not going to be the first time. It's not going to be the last time that Hector does this. We will see even in this book, he will leave another charioteer on the ground after he has fallen. And Diomedes goes after Hector. Who is Diomedes' charioteer? It's Nestor. And I described how in battle in the Iliad, we have the fighter who is on the chariot. He has a charioteer, a driver of the horses. And then usually when it comes time to battle, the fighter will jump out. Well, when Nestor lost his horse, Diomedes told Nestor to come into his chariot, and Nestor at that point became the charioteer. And Diomedes goes after Hector. And Zeus sends signs that warn Nestor and Diomedes not to pursue Hector, because this is going to be Hector's day. It's actually going to last for quite a while, as we will see. So at line number 133, Zeus thundered horribly and let loose the shimmering lightning and dashed it to the ground in front of the horses of Diomedes. And a ghastly blaze of flaming sulfur shot up, and the horses, terrified both, cringed away against the chariot. And the glittering reins escaped out of the hands of Nestor as he was afraid in his heart and called out to Diomedes, "Son of Tydeus, steer now to flight your single-foot horses. Can you not see that the power of Zeus no longer is with you? For the time Zeus, son of Cronos, gives his glory to this man, for today, hereafter, if he will give it to us also. No man can beat back the purpose of Zeus, not even one who is very strong, since Zeus is by far the greater." And Diomedes is lamenting the fact that if he shrinks away from Hector, then what will people say of him? He says to Nestor at line number 146, "Yes, old sir, all this you have said is fair and orderly, but this thought comes as a bitter sorrow to my heart and my spirit. For some day Hector will openly say before the Trojans, 'The son of Tydeus, running before me, fled to his vessels.' So he will vaunt, and then let the wide earth open beneath me." We've seen Agamemnon use similar language about having the wide earth open beneath him when he laments the fact that after Menelaus is wounded, in book number 3, book number 4, sorry. What will people say of me if I return to Argos, or when I return to Argos, having led a failed mission to Troy? So Nestor takes Diomedes away from the danger. And Hector mocks Diomedes when he sees him fleeing. He says at line number 161 onwards, "Son of Tydeus, beyond others, the fast-mounted Danaans honored you with pride of place, the choice meats and the filled wine cups, but now they will disgrace you, who are no better than a woman. Down with you, poor doll." And at this point, when Diomedes hears Hector mocking him, which, as I mentioned in my discussion about common elements in battle scenes in the Iliad, in my discussion about book number 5, this is one of the things that is very common, that the victor in battle, or the one who has the upper hand in battle, will often mock the one who is not favored at that instance. And also actually vice versa, the one who maybe has been hit by an arrow, but is merely wounded, might mock the one who has shot the arrow, as we will see Diomedes himself do at a later point. So when Diomedes hears Hector mock him, he actually wants to turn around and once again go after Hector. But as he does this, once again, Zeus sends signs that terrify Nestor and Diomedes and remind them not to go after Hector. So at line number 170, 3 times from the hills of Ida, Zeus of the councils thundered, giving a sign to the Trojans that the battle was turning. It's very interesting language. This battle is turning, right? When you turn, you're getting the representation of what is high coming low and what is low coming high, and of things being reversed. You get the sense of reversal of fortune. And the turning is not due to any decisions that human beings are making. It is described as out of the control of what human beings can do. And so in many ways, what is happening on the battlefield is a representation, or it communicates not human power, but lack of human power. But Hector called afar in a great voice to the Trojans, Lycians, and Dardanians who fight at close quarters. Be men now, dear friends, remember your furious valor. I see that the son of Cronos has bowed his head and assented to my high glory and success, but granted the Danaans disaster. Fools who designed with care these fortifications, speaking about the wall, the Achaean wall that protects the camp, and the ditch and the stakes inside the ditch, which we have seen the Achaians built in book number 7. Fools who designed with care these fortifications, flimsy things not worth a thought, which will not beat my strength back, but lightly my horses will leap the ditch they have dug them. But after I have come beside their hollow ships, let there be someone who will remember to bring me ravening fire, so that I can set their ships on fire and cut down the very Argives mazed in the smoke at the side of their vessels. Now, you will recall that this is what Achilles had wanted. He wanted Hector to overpower the Achaians all the way to the Achaean ships. And Hector's intention now is to burn the Achaean ships. So taking you back briefly to book number 1, this is what Achilles had told Thetis, his mother, to tell Zeus. He says to his mother, Achilles says to his mother at 407 of book number 1, sit beside him and take his knees. Zeus. And remind him of these things. If perhaps he might be these things, how you helped him once when he was in bondage, held in bondage by the other immortals. If perhaps Zeus might be willing to help the Trojans and pin the Achaeans back against the ships in the water, dying. Now, when Hector says that his aim is to burn the Achaean ships and smoke them out in the ravening fire and ultimately slaughter them, this is exactly what Achilles wanted. Despite the fact that Hector is his greatest enemy, on the Trojan side, Agamemnon is a greater enemy, and despite the fact that Agamemnon is on the Achaean side. Well, Hera does intervene. Ultimately, it's not going to amount to much. And Athena, we will see, wants to intervene, but these interventions are not going to amount to very much. We are told at line number 218 that Hera set it in Agamemnon's heart to rush in with speed himself and stir the Achaians. He went on his way beside the Achaean ships and their shelters, holding up in his heavy hand the great colored mantle, and stood beside the black, huge, hollowed ship of Odysseus, which lay in the midmost, so that he could call out to both sides, either toward the shelters of Telamonian Aias or towards Achilles, since these two had drawn their balanced ship up at the utter ends, sure of the strength of their hands and their courage. That's a very, very important passage. It articulates to you the formation of the Achaean ships. We know that Odysseus' ship is in the midmost. The Achaean ships, the Achaean fleet, are in a row, and Odysseus' ships are in the middle, with Aias' ships, son of Telamon, Aias' ships on one side, and Achilles' ships on the other side. So we have Achilles at one end, Odysseus at another end, Aias at the other end. Odysseus in the middle and Aias at the other end. Sure of their strength of hands. What does that mean? Well, I think what is being communicated here is that the Achaeans wanted their strongest fighters at both ends of the fleet, Aias and Achilles. Sorry, I did that reverse, Aias and Achilles. And if the Trojans attack, what would happen is that the strongest forces could envelop them, surround them, and then ultimately ambush them. So it was a military strategy to do it this way. Whereas if your ends were weak, then the Trojans could attack on all sides. If your ends were strong, the Trojans would be forced to attack through the middle. And then they could be surrounded, enveloped. And Agamemnon tries to rally his troops. He says to the Achaeans that there was a time where you said that one of you could handle, could defeat, could go up against 100 or even 200 Trojans. And now Hector is on the brink of lighting our ships on fire. He cries out to Zeus at line number 236, Father Zeus, is it one of our two strong kings you have stricken in this disaster now, and stripped him of his high honor? For I say that never did I pass by your fair-wrought altar in my bent ships when I came here on this desperate journey. But on all altars I burned the fat and the thighs of oxen in my desire to sack the strong-walled city of the Trojans. Still, Zeus, bring to pass at least this thing that I pray for. Let our men at least get clear and escape, and let not the Achaians be thus beaten down at the hands of the Trojans. And we are told that Zeus takes pity on the Achaians. We will see what form this pity takes by the end of this moment of crisis. He sends down a sign. Zeus sends down a sign, an eagle. We've spoken about how the eagle is Zeus's bird, and one of the ways in which seers, augurs, try to understand the mind of Zeus. And the eagle is carrying a fawn, the young of a deer, caught in its talons. And the Achaians mount an offensive when they see this sign. It's not often we find descriptions of Achaean fighters as using bows and arrows. The Achaians aren't described very often as being archers, but there is an archer on the Achaean side. His name is Teucrus, and he is the half-brother of Telamonian Aias. And he is extremely effective in this part of the battle. He takes down 10 enemy fighters using his bow and arrow. And I want to look at a scene when Zeus takes down when Teucrus takes down the 9th fighter. His name is Gorgythion. So I'll look at line number 300 onwards. He let fly another shaft from the bowstring, straight for Hector. And all his heart was straining to hit him, but missed his man and struck down instead a strong son of Priam, Gorgythion the blameless, hit in the chest by an arrow. Gorgythion, whose mother was lovely Castanira, Priam's bride, from Iceni, with the form of a goddess. Gorgythion bent, drooping his head to one side as a garden poppy bends beneath the weight of its yield in the rains of springtime. So his head bent slack to one side beneath the helmet's weight. Look at how Gorgythion is described. The death of Gorgythion is described. He's described like a wilting poppy under the spring rains. I don't know. When I originally read this, maybe I didn't pay too much attention to it, but after the work that I have done on ancient Greek values and ancient Greek myth and tragedy and philosophy, it's really striking to see the death of a human being as described like a wilting plant. For you and for me, there's nothing more significant than the death of a human being. And you know that when somebody that you love dies, it changes your life. When I think about death, I think about every second of the individual's life, all the effort, all the thought, all the experiences, all the relationships, all the work, brushing teeth, making a meal, going out for a walk, helping a friend, being helped by a friend. Every moment of an individual's life as being so rich with history. Every moment of your life, every moment of my life is incalculably rich. I'm thinking the way I'm thinking because of all of the choices that I made and all of the ways in which I have been affected throughout my life. And if I hadn't made these choices and I wasn't affected in these ways, you would be hearing something different or nothing at all. And when somebody dies, all of that is gone. The consciousness, the self-consciousness, it doesn't exist anymore. All of the history, all of a history that comprises every single moment of every single minute of every single hour of every single day of every single year of the individual's life, it's just gone. Now, it's gone in the sense that the person doesn't exist, but it's not gone in the sense of how the person has affected everyone else in the world during his life, and that will last forever. Jesus says in the Gospel of Matthew, heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away, right? We pass away, but the ways in which we have affected the world will never pass away. It can't. It's now embedded into the very fabric of the common humanity. So when a human being dies, what could be more significant than that? And what could be more significant than learning that you will die very soon? We all know that we will die, but we don't know how and we don't know when. But if you or I were diagnosed with a terminal illness, it would change our lives. It ought to change our lives forever, for the remainder of the time that we have left. And how we think about things, the choices that we make, what we do, what we don't do, how we spend the time that we have, it carries enormous weight. There's nothing heavier than that. It's a cross that we have to bear. People who have been diagnosed with terminal illnesses or with, well, they say that they don't see their lives the same way. People who have been diagnosed with an illness that is not terminal, they often say that their lives, I mean, that's when they begin to live. I mean, truly live. That's when they live in the deepest, most meaningful possible way, where they're attentive to things and they don't take things for granted. But to describe the death of a human being as like a plant that is wilting in the rain, it reminds me of what Glaucus had told, was it Diomedes? When he had that exchange in book number 6, that as is the generation of leaves, so is that of men. Yeah, Diomedes. A human being is like a leaf. I mean, here, yeah, human being is like a plant. It doesn't have any significance, meaning, or value. It turns with the seasons. It is subject to that which the human being does not control. It is replaceable. It is dispensable. It doesn't have any intrinsic value. But often we will find soldiers being described, fallen soldiers being described in ways that remind us that in this world, the human being doesn't have intrinsic value. And that is the core point that I want to make. In comparing what the human being is and means in a text like this with what the human being is and means in biblical writings. Well, the Achaean success does not last very long, because very soon Zeus once again gives Trojans favor. At line number 335 onwards. Now, once again, the Olympian filled the Trojans with fury, and they piled the Achaeans straight backward against the deep ditch as Hector ranged in their foremost ranks in the pride of his great strength. Now, Hector is described in a language that would typically be used to describe a lion. As when some hunting hound in the speed of his feet, pursuing a wild boar or a lion, snaps from behind at his quarters or flanks, but watches for the beast to turn upon him. So Hector followed close on the heels of the flowing-haired Achaeans, killing ever the last of the men, and they fled in terror. But after they had crossed back over the ditch and the sharp stakes in flight, and many had gone down into the hands of the Trojans, they reined in and stood fast again beside the ships, calling aloud upon each other, and to all the gods uplifting their hands. Each man of them cried out his prayers in a great voice, while Hector, wearing the stark eyes of a Gorgon or murderous Ares, wheeled about at the edge of his bright-maned horses. How is Hector described at the highest moment of his power, the moment where the Achaeans are fleeing in terror? He's described as a Gorgon. What is a Gorgon? A Gorgon is a symbol of terror. A Gorgon is like Medusa. A Gorgon is a creature who is so terrifying and so ugly that when you look at that creature, you turn into stone. At the highest power of Hector's human being, he is described in terms of that which is not human. As a Gorgon or as murderous Ares. What is the concept of the human? What is the concept of a human in a text that describes the highest point of the human in terms of what is non-human, in terms of what you and I would call inhuman? How do you relate to somebody who is murderous? How do you relate to somebody who inspires nothing but terror? How do you relate to somebody that you can't even look at without freezing, without becoming paralyzed? For you and for me, it doesn't inspire good images. It doesn't describe what we would like to be like, what we would like our friends to be like, or the kind of people that we look up to, unless one is very seriously sick and gets inspired by serial killers or gets inspired by murder. It's hard to comprehend the mind like that. And this is not to say that Hector is doing anything wrong. In the Iliad, Hector is doing exactly what he ought to be doing. And that's what we are to take from a passage like this, is that there is nothing evil in the Iliad about expressing your power by killing those who have done you wrong in your done wrong to your honor. This is what the Achaeans are doing to the Trojans, and this is what the Trojans are doing to the Achaeans. Or in seeking to accumulate value by taking it from your lesser. And so I'm going to jump a little bit to the point where the sun falls, sunset. At line number 485, the shining sun, the shining light of the sun was dipped in the ocean, trailing black night across the grain-giving land. For the Trojans, the daylight sank against their will because the Trojans are on the offensive. They pinned the Achaians against the ships. They haven't yet crossed the ditch, and they haven't yet penetrated the wall, but they are outside the ditch. So night has saved the Achaians. For the Trojans, the daylight sank against their will, but for the Achaians, sweet and thrice supplicated was the coming on of the dark night. The Achaians are praying for it. They're begging for it. Now glorious Hector held an assembly of all the Trojans, taking them aside from the ships by a swirling river on clean ground, where there showed a space not cumbered with corpses. It sounds like the whole ground is clogged with dead bodies. Hector has to find a place where the people can stand. They stepped to the ground from behind their horses and listened to Hector, the loved of Zeus, and the words he spoke to them. Now, keep in mind, Hector here is winning honor. But we will get to a point when I will be asking you, why did Zeus do this? I mean, we already know at a basic level that the reason that Zeus is giving Hector honor is to give honor to Achilles. But here Hector is described as the loved of Zeus. You know that Achilles is described as, by his own mother, as one whose existence is miserable beyond all others, or lamentable beyond all others. I can't remember the exact words that is used in book number 1. But to be the loved of Zeus, what does that mean? When you follow the story, the complete story of Hector's fortunes, not just an episode in the turning wheel of his fatal reversals. And Hector speaks to his troops. And at line number 5, maybe 498, he says to them, "Now I had thought that destroying the ships and all the Achaians, we might take our way back once more to windy Ilion, but the darkness came too soon. And this, beyond all else, rescued the Argives and their vessels along the beach where the sea breaks. But now let us give way to Black Knight's persuasion. Let us make ready our evening meal. And as for your flowing-maned horses, set them free from their harness and cast down fodder before them, and lead forth also out of the city oxen and fat sheep in all speed, and convey out also the kindly sweet wine with food out of our houses. And heap many piles of firewood, so that all night long and until the young dawn appears, we may burn many fires, and the glare go up into heaven, so that not in the nighttime the flowing-haired Achaians may set out to run for home over the sea's wide ridges. No, not thus in their own good time must they take to their vessels, but in such a way that a man of them at home will still nurse his wound, the place where he has been hit with an arrow or sharp spear springing to his ship, so that another may shrink hereafter from bringing down fearful war on the Trojans, breakers of horses." Hector wants the Trojans to light fires, to cast enough light so that the Trojans cannot escape without the so that the Achaians cannot escape without the Trojans knowing. And if the Trojans were to see the Achaians trying to escape, at least let them return home wounded. And in the morning, Hector's intention is to cross the ditch, breach the wall, and lead the Trojans right to the Achaean ships, where he can burn the ships, smoke the Achaians out, and then slaughter all of them. The ending of book number 8 is remarkable. It's such a remarkable image that is presented to us by the poet. At line number 555 onwards. As when in the sky the stars about the moon shining are seen in all their glory, when the air has fallen to stillness, and all the high places of the hills are clear, and the shoulders outjutting, and the deep ravines as endless bright air spills from the heavens, and all the stars are seen, to make glad the heart of the shepherd, such in their numbers blazed, the watchfires, the Trojans were burning, between the waters of Xanthos and the ships before Ilion. 1,000 fires were lit. 1,000 fires were burning there in the plain, and beside each one sat 50 men in the flare of the blazing firelight, and standing each beside his chariot, chomping white barley and oats, the horses waited for the dawn to mount to her high place. 1,000 watchfires just beyond the Achaean ditch. Each watchfire has 50 Trojans. That's 50,000 Trojan soldiers are waiting just beyond the ditch for the dawn to finish the Achaians once and for all. Book number 9 is the most astonishing, remarkable, loaded, interesting book in the entire Iliad. It is the axis of the poem, and that's where we need to proceed next. My name is Mohammed Kimji. If you are interested in connecting with me, please go to LinkedIn, find me, and send me an invitation. Thank you for your time.